And he's in the floor then. And I'm fixing to come down on him. You got your butt chewed out and you still won racing. Oh, yeah, John was on me about that. Dang.
Waddell Wilson is one of the most legendary engine builders and crew chiefs in NASCAR history. He's a pretty quiet guy. He doesn't do these things very often. We decided we would go meet Waddell at Holman Moody so he could look at some of the stuff he used to use, and it'd be a cool place to just kind of look around and see what stories come up, because that's what we like to do. We like to jog memories with artifacts as opposed to just sitting down and talking. We were just at Harry Gant's yesterday, and he had one of those on his desk.
One of those?
Yeah, same card.
You're kidding. Oh, I remember we signed together. 2 or 3 times we'd do. We rode all over the United States on a motorcycle together. Don Tilly and Harry Gant and I.
Wow. Were you there whenever he went over the...
No, thank goodness I wasn't with him when he done that. He was telling me about it. It's a wonder he's alive.
Yeah, like I don't know how he got so lucky to land on a mattress.
Yeah, how's that happen? The good Lord put that down there for him. Let's get the pain over with.
What comes to mind when you look in this thing? What comes to mind when you look in this engine bay?
Yeah, I remember in '63 being down there at Daytona, July race. Then we had to take the cylinder heads off of the engine to check the bore and the stroke. When I was doing that, Fireball was back there on the workbench. He was always watching what we was doing. I was putting the gaskets, when I took them off the engine, throw them in the trash can, big trash barrel. And I heard somebody coming through the building holler, "Don't throw them away, they're competition proven." It was Wendell Scott. Down in that barrel he went to get them old gaskets out. I said, "Well, you know, we don't run them over again." "Yeah, but I do." "Okay, I'll save you some gaskets and parts and pieces." And I did from then on, but he was a great guy.
What's that story about John Holman and the cheating? Whenever he had that talk with you?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That whole thing.
Well, from day one, once I was on that race car and I was building engines, he'd come up to me and he'd stick that big finger right in my chest. He said, "Waddell, if you ever get caught cheating, I'll fire you." And I knew dang well he would. Yeah. There was no doubt in my mind, because he
told me our cars are supposed to be better prepared and we're supposed to have better drivers. And if we can't win like that, then we don't deserve to win.
But he told me, that's what he told me. He said, "You're good enough to win without cheating." Well, I never forgot that. I never, ever got caught cheating, because I didn't cheat. He made a believer out of me, which I'm glad he did.
Yeah.
But I never had the desire to do it anyway.
I think he learned that from Strop. I think Bill Strop was somebody that influenced my dad's idea of a race car. Strop's stuff was always clean and nice and well prepared.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where Dad was hired from Strop's to come out and run Apollo Engineering.
It made me work harder, because he knew that we could win races with the ability that we had. A lot of people accused me of cheating throughout the years. Nobody ever proved anything, because there wasn't nothing to prove, because we didn't cheat.
You were good at reading the rule book and figuring out things that other people didn't think of.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of things involved there. That, you know, if you knew anything about rolling resistance and aerodynamics and horsepower, it took those 3 ingredients to make a race car go fast. You know, different drivers that come in to work on the race car, and they'd have different ideas. You'd always pick up on their ideas, what they had. And I remember one thing I learned off of David Pearson. He'd always wanted Gatorade, drink Gatorade, and he'd do one down the back stretch, he'd throw it out the window. And it would go down the side of the race car, and it would leave a stain. And you could tell exactly where the wind was going. So that was a big help to, you know, help me with the aerodynamics of it, because I never did say to nobody else, but I always looked as soon as the race over how that air was flowing around the side of that race car.
How did you use the Gatorade stains to make changes? Like, what was it doing?
Well,
and what did you learn?
Just seeing where the air was going, how it was, and what you can do to direct it another way if you want to deflect the air. You either want it to go down on the spoiler or run it off the spoiler. See, a big critical area of these race cars is this right here, called the A-post. You could work on this and gain a lot, and then the roof here. And then back here you can make the air go, you know, put a vortex on it, you can pull it down or push it up.
How did you determine what you needed to do based on how the car was reacting? Like, were there some cases?
Just in the wind tunnel, work with it.
So you do it, like, where if you were like Cale at Daytona when he said this car is going to fly away, did you ever change more than just the spoiler to get it to stay down?
Well, he screwed up himself. When he didn't take and run that car, you know, I don't know why he was holding back like he was, and I don't think he really felt the car was going to run that fast. That it did. I mean, it was supposed to. You know, going down the backstretch at 203. I mean, it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Did you ever get into making your bodies asymmetrical for side force or any of that?
No. Later on, the people got into doing that. I've seen their cars. You can see they was doing it. And if you had a knife edge around the back of the car, air would run off. You round it, the air would pull around it.
Huh.
So it's pretty simple once you get to looking at it and watching it and observing what it done.
Did you ever ask him to throw Gatorade out the other side of the car so you could see what that one was doing?
Well, you know, whenever they built Talladega, we'd go down there and test, and you know, they had ideas. There was 7 engineers with Ford Motor Company that a lot of times would be at the racetrack, and they'd always say, we can't build them engines like you can, but we can help you with the parts and pieces. And they were smart people. They'd hook everything up in the car, and they had a tape readout then, didn't have digital. You know, they'd tell a car going around the racetrack, you know, the horsepower it was, and how it accelerated down the backstretch and all.
What was that story with the carburetors and spacers when they started bringing restrictor plates in the first time?
Well, that happened in 71, whenever Bobby Allison was driving our car, and Pearson left, and Bobby had come in, and we just won the championship at Pearson in 68 and 69 out of Holman Moody. We had an 1.5 inch restrictor plate they'd put underneath the carburetor, and you need to have a spacer on top of that. So anyway, I got looking at it, it says a minimum, you know, or the max 1 inch 11/16. It didn't have a minimum because it's an 850 carburetor with the sleeves in it to reduce it down to 830 carburetor. So what I done is took the sleeves out and tapered the sleeves down and found out 7 to 8 degrees was ideal flow numbers. But and that's what's amazing about it. When they had to turn up and look at it, they could actually know what they're looking at. They didn't know that I had sleeves in it. It wasn't hid.
They just didn't
and they
understand
was
it.
as legal as they could be. That's what I told John Oble. He asked me, he said, "What is that a legal carburetor?" I said, "It'll pass any of the rules. Any inspection, it'll pass." Now here's a trick to get the air bleeds worked out in, you know, that sleeve, because you had all the air bleeds in there, and when you push it up in there as far it was kind of tricky to get it to where it worked.
How did you iron that out? Did you like go in there and like watch the fuel on the?
No, I done it on flow bands. You know, I come up with 7 to 8 degrees. You know, I worked with it, you know, but 7 to 8 degrees was perfect flow. You know, to atomize the fuel. And then when I got through doing all that, you know, just about had the same horsepower I did without the restrictor plate in it. So, you know, it was one of them things that you could do because there wasn't no minimum, but it was max. We won, I don't know how many races with Bobby Allison that year in 71, whenever we done that. 72, you know, that's whenever Holman Moody quit running race cars. And then in 72, the Wood brothers come to me and wanted to know if I'd build engines for them. They wanted me to build 429s, which that's an engine I didn't particularly like building because it had Cooper rings and O-rings and took a half a day to stretch the rod bolts in it. I went to work for Holman Moody in 1963, and they put me in the engine room. First thing I know, they getting ready to go to Daytona, and they wanted me to be on Fireball's pit crew. I've already told you about the Daytona. Got hit on pit road and all. But that morning of the race, he come out there and sat down beside me and he said, "You always do the signboard?" And I said, "Yeah." So we didn't have radios then. And he said, "Now let me tell you something. When I come in the pits," he said, "You go right or left, and I'm gonna follow that signboard wherever you go with it." Okay. He told me that 2 or 3 times. So last pit stop, he come down, and there wasn't no pit road speed or anything like that. So he come down pit road, and I seen him coming, and I said, "That thing got them old Durham brakes on it. Ain't no way he's gonna stop that thing where he's supposed to stop it." So he got the pit away from me, and I remember I jumped straight up, and he run up under me, and I landed back on the windshield. Because I knew if I went right or left, he was going to follow me, and that ain't going to get me out of trouble. I'm in trouble, period. And you know, he ended up winning the race that day, and Renzen runs second to him. We go to Victor Lane. He never to this day said a word about that. He never mentioned it. You can bleep this stuff out, right?
Yeah, I can move it around and make
Oh,
it make
you
sense.
can, because you're going to be doing it. But anyway, the 63 ended up, and Ralph Moody and Fred Lorenzen come to me and wanted me to be the engine or the jackman on the car. And I come to figure out that they was just wanting to get my engine. But anyway, there's a lot of the guys in the shop found out that there was going to be a tryout for that pit crew. It was a jack man. So I never jacked the car. I didn't know what So anyway, we went and done it on Lorenzo's car. There was about 8 of us. And then they said I cheated because I was a little quicker than they was. And Ralph said, well, do it again. I said, okay. Well, I had a little feel for it then, so I was very athletic in high school and in college. Anyway, I done it, and much quicker that time. They just all turned and went out the door. So anyway, I was a jack man on the car in '64, but it really was to get the engines that I was building, what it's all about. And then we go to Daytona, and that's when Richard Petty and the Chrysler people showed up with that Hemi. I mean, we practiced the first day. Richard didn't even practice. The second day he practiced, he was 4 miles an hour faster than we was. Lorenzo took his uniform off and went to the motel. You can figure that's enough of that. Whenever I was building engines for Lorenzo, A.J. Foyt called Ford Motor Company and wanted to know if said, if you'll call John Holman and have Waddell Wilson build my engine, I'll run Charlotte. Holman come back there in the engine room in front of everybody and said, you got to build an engine for A.J. Foyt for Charlotte. I said, okay. So anyway, the next day he come back in there and said, well, Dick Hutchins, the company car, and he wants you to build his engines. So I had to build the 3 engines. Lorenzo sat on the pole. I don't remember where the other 2 qualified. But in the race, AJ was passing Lorenzo and coming out of turn 4 and got in the wall. But he still finished the race, but he wasn't competitive after that. But when the day was over, Lorenzo won the race. Dick Hutchinson finished second. Nobody ever said a word about it. But it was an interesting time, And then that same year, they decided that, NASCAR had lowered the weight of the race car, and you could put smaller engines in, a smaller cubic inch engine. So they come to me about building a 396 engine. Got the parts and pieces and put it together. And it was a ring combination of pistons we hadn't never run before. And I went with the car to Rockingham, and then that day I took the plugs out of it, and it was oiling down, the rings wouldn't seat. Took the engine back to the shop, went back Friday morning with it, checked it out that day, qualified, and the engine still hadn't sealed up. Took it out, took it back to the shop, back to Charlotte, took it apart and changed the rings in again, and Saturday morning it finally healed up. I'll never forget, the happiest I believe I've ever seen that man, and that wasn't very often. But we was at Rockingham whenever Lorenzo won that race of that 396 engine, and then they protested us. I figured they would protest us, and they did. When we come out of Victor Lane and said, you've been protested. Well, Holman, your dad, goes and protests the next 3 or 4 cars. One of them was Hutch.
Yeah.
His own car. And anyway, White, what was his name? Not Rex White, but some real good race car driver ended up running second to it because Richard fell out of the race. He chased Lorenzo until he blowed his up or something. But anyway, we won the race, and then we go into Victor Lane. Well, all them dang boys is out there in the infield celebrating, and they left me with the car. So I had to take heads off, check the bore and stoke, pull the fuel line out, make sure it was legal. And when they finally said it was okay, 2 or 3 of them did come back and help me push it up on the back of the hauler. I get in the truck and I'm pulling it out of the place, and somebody's beating on the door. And I look, and it's your dad. And he said, don't you need a driver? Move over. He pushed me over, got to the other side, and back to the shop we come. I never seen him as happy as that day.
Wow.
He was tickled to death.
That wasn't the year that they brought in Jimmy Clark to drive in Rockingham, was it? Because he liked to have an international flair to the races, and he brought in Jimmy Clark. Jimmy got out of the car and said, it's really a fabulous car. It doesn't turn, doesn't go very fast, and you're sure can't stop it. But other than that, it's a fine race car.
I remember Bill France and your dad come up with some deal for somebody to run Talladega. I don't know who the driver was. It was some over the seas driver from someplace. Anyway, we had Dick Hutchison and Jake and all them boys down there. They was down on the other end of pit road. It's a long pit road at Talladega. So anyway, I'm on Bobby's car, and we end up winning the race. They come back the next morning, drive through the night, come back 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going in Holman Moody, and Holman's standing there. Here he's got big thumb comes again, or that big finger. Why didn't you go down there and help them boys? That was a Holman Moody car. I mean, I'm on the other end and I'm a front tire changer. Well, I can't leave pits. Oh, I think, dang. And there's a couple of guys standing there. Travis Carter was one of them, and he still reminds me of that. You got your butt chewed out, and you still won race. Oh yeah, John was on me about that. Dang.
Yeah, they brought in a number of European drivers to try and do it. Jackie Ickx was convinced the Woods brothers were trying to kill him because he tried to drive the car at Riverside, and at that time,
that was an idiot.
They just didn't know how to do it, and didn't know, the NASCAR field, the NASCAR cars had a different suspension setup to them, and the Europeans didn't ever do it. And Ennis Ireland was invited to run at Daytona at the super speedway at one point, and he made the mistake of going to the press or giving an interview about how Mr. France asked us to come in and show these boys how to get around the track properly. He couldn't qualify. We had to put in a substitute driver to get the car fast enough to make the race because he wasn't quick enough to even get in the race.
I'll tell you one thing, they found out, but they come and run against these guys and these mechanics, that was a whole new ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were the best of the best, period. In '67, going to Daytona, I was still building engines for Lorenzen. Mario was down there, and we was down there a couple of weeks or 3. And Mario kept telling John Holman, he said, my engine is not nothing as good as Lorenzen's engine. So finally, John came to me and said, why don't you build an engine for him too? And I said, okay. So I'm back at the shop, and I built the engine, built Lorenzen's engine, put them in the truck and drove it through the night, got there the next morning. And unloading the engines, I went and told Lorenzen his engine number, and I told Mario his engine number. And 3 or 4 years ago, when they put Mario in the Southern Motorsports Hall of Fame, he said, come over here, I want to tell you the rest of your story. He said, whenever I went to get that engine, they wouldn't let me have it. They said, no, take this engine. He said, no, I would not give in to them, and I made him let me have that engine. He said, but I hit the racetrack, and as soon as I hit the racetrack, that thing picked up 400 RPMs. He said, I knew I had them covered then. But he didn't have a good pit crew. Lorenzen, I was on Lorenzen's pit crew, and we would beat him out of the pits by a long ways, and he'd run us down and pace us. And then the 2 cars lapped the field that day. They going back to lane, and them boys, and we was loading our stuff up on the Lorenzen car, and all of us mad at me and said, you gave him a better engine than you gave us. They were identical.
What were your engines different than the other, whoever else was building engines at Holman Moody back then? Like, why were they asking them for yours?
Well, we're all going to get the parts out of the same parts department. And why my engine was better than other people's, I can't answer that. I've wondered myself, why are they better? What are they doing that I'm not doing, or vice versa? But I put a lot of emphasis on it, and I want every piece perfect, and like honing the blocks and measuring everything and fitting it, and I was a perfectionist, and that's how I build an engine. Yeah, that's how you cut your head, that blocks right here, put it on here, and now I've run this machine, I'll bet it's the same one I run.
The tag, I think, is on the back over here.
It is. This is one of the original machines.
Yeah, I remember. That's how you cut you'd put the engine together, the bottom end of it and all, and then it always had taper in them, the blocks would. And then they wasn't ever level anyway. So you'd get it to where you want it. You got the shims, cut it to whatever you're looking for, and then you'd always make sure that you had your cubic inch figured out. I mean, not cubic, compression ratio.
It's on your nose.
One thing that won't leave.
They got on my nose after that.
I don't know, that's a weird fly.
Boy, that's an old piece. Probably used it when I was here. Throwing all the pistons and rods in.
Yep, it's got the original tag on it. You probably did use this thing. What does the foot pedal do?
Operate the manual, push it down, and she starts turning.
Do you ever do any cam grinding?
No. No, that's way out of me. Larry Wallace, he's one of the best men that worked here. And he would help me. Everybody else was trying to kick me or something.
The last time we were here, Larry Wallace was still over there doing that.
Yeah, he's a great person. He's one of the best that ever come out of here. We had some in here that wasn't worth killing. That one old boy, he's wanted to go around. You ever get a barrel Vortex Magneta, put a real motor on it and see how far the flame would shoot out from it? This one old boy, he was just a clown. I was telling Lee about it. And going around playing. And I was always big, wide open, trying to keep up with building my engine for who I was working for. And I was leaning up against one of them workbenches, and he hit me in the tail. A big blue place come on me where he hit me with that thing that zapped it. And as soon as he done it, automatically I turned around, had that main cap in one hand and a file in the other hand. I zipped around and caught him as he was going down. I missed him with that file. I'd have drove it through him. I know, but I did find the file. I thought it was hard. I never threw a baseball no harder than that. And the next thing I do, I'm up on the workbench and I took that main cap out of my right hand, out of my left hand, put it in my right one, and he's in the floor then. And I'm fixing to come down on him to thank the good Lord. I'd have drove it through him. There ain't no doubt, because I was aiming right at his head.
Wow.
Oh, I'll tell you one thing, he turned white as a sheet.
Did he stop doing that?
He never, at the end of that. Yeah. Well, I remember this machine.
What did you use this thing most for?
Well, it's side grinded, just clear up the sides of whatever you was working on. What'd you do in the industry? Did you build engines or?
I built an engine once and it blew up, and I figured I'd let somebody
enough
else.
of that, right?
I'll put cams in and do, put heads on and change valve springs and stuff, but I'm not gonna try to assemble a bottom end.
Yeah.
I don't want to build transmissions either.
No, I wasn't big into transmissions, especially automatics.
Yeah, that's a manual. Maybe I could figure that out, but the automatics with all the clutches and stuff,
Yeah.
It's just
manually, I'm with you on that.
We can fabricate, but that's about the extent of that.
Before doing these videos, I used to build turbo systems, like headers and turbo kits, intercoolers, and that kind of stuff. So I like headers and sounds, and that's a good question. Was there a particular engine that was your favorite to listen to, the way it sounded when it was running right?
Oh yeah. People probably think I'm crazy. When I was running one on the dyno, in my shoe soles, I could feel if it had the power it should have. It just had a feel to it.
No, that totally makes sense.
I could just feel it in my shoes.
You could just resonate inside you. And
Well, it had that certain beat that I've had drivers said they could, before they got to the end of pit road, they knew if the engine was going to run or not, which that makes sense too.
Yeah, I believe it.
When it come up through the gears, and I can tell if it's accelerating and doing what it's supposed to do.
It's weird how some mechanical things like that can somehow have a connection with you, where you can you feel it or you don't feel it.
Oh yeah.
I've read that you raced when you were a teenager. What made you switch to building engines? Did you enjoy racing, or?
I couldn't afford to do that no more. It cost too much money. And then I wrecked my race car, and I went down there in Hialeah Speedway in Miami, and that's why I was running the race cars down there. And I was doing pretty good. I won, but then I finally got it tore all to pieces, and I said, that's enough of that, so I come back to North Carolina. Can't afford that.
Learn how to build engines.
Well, that's just like when I went to work for Holman Moody. I never had no idea that. Well, I wasn't looking for a job as race cars or that. And just a friend of mine, matter of fact, it's my wife's brother, the one that said, why don't you go to Holman Moody and ask him for a job? I said, yeah, okay, I'll get the same answer. And when I went in the door and was running into the foreman, and he told me he wasn't needing nobody. I said, what I'd been hearing all week, so why worry with it? But anyway, it went from there. But it was, and the thing about it, all of them was wanting to see what I was doing different, while these other guys wasn't running as good. And 68 and 69, we run Ford Motor Company to send us after the championship with David Pearson out of Holman Moody, and we won it both years. And it was hard fought because there was Richard Petty and Bobby Isaacs, and there was a lot of good cars to run against. 72, when Pearson you know, that's whenever Holman Moody quit running race cars. And then in '72, the Wood brothers come to me and wanted to know if I'd build engines for them. So anyway, they wanted me to build 429s, which that's an engine I didn't particularly like building because it had Cooper rings and O-rings and took a half a day to stretch the rod bolts in it. And then at the end of that year, I went to work for L.G. DeWitt and Benny Parsons. And then it was interesting because Holman Moody wasn't running no race car, and I wanted to work on race cars. In '73, you know, with Benny Parsons, we won the championship in '73. That was a big deal.
What I was fascinated by when you were telling me stuff on the phone is like how people were wedging the noses down on the cars and struggling with the lawn.
Yeah, we'll get to that in 1980.
Okay, you're going in chronological order here.
Anyway, we was in Riverside in '75. The race out there in January. That was the first race of the season. Benny come to me and he said, I got a set of pistons for Daytona. Oh, okay. So he brought them to me and I opened the box up. I said, Benny, these are drag race pistons. They won't work. Oh, yeah, this guy swears they will be great. Okay. So we got back to the shop and I built the engine. And I'm thinking, well, what are we going to do for a backup engine? Well, you just have to go through. And then the year before, you know, they downsized the engine from 427 to 366. And then we went from 366 to 358, 358 inches. So I got through all those old spare parts that had been blowed up and everything, finding enough pieces to build an engine with. And this was all used stuff. I put an engine together. We go to Daytona. And Benny said, well, we'll leave the new engine in and we'll run a couple laps, then we'll take it out and put the old engine in you built. Okay, 2 laps it blowed up. I told him, I said, that's quarter-mile pistons. They ain't 500-mile pistons. But anyway, so here we got this old engine. I mean, I wouldn't give you 2 cents for it. We practiced, we qualified with it, and I don't remember where we ended up, and we must have fell out of the 125s or 150s because we started 30-something in the race. And it come down the latter part of the race, and we're running second. I said, how are we doing that? And then all of a sudden, you know, the Wood brothers and David Pearson, they were leading the race, and the slow car moved them out of the way. Anyway, we ended up in the lead. And then all dawned on me, how big is that engine? What did I pick up for a crankshaft? Because that's what the difference in the cubic inch. I'd have no clue, because I wouldn't checking down something, go down to Daytona and think about winning a race. I mean, I don't even think a thing will run long enough to get the water hot in it. We ended up winning the race. We go into Victory Lane, and I thought Benny was going to squeeze me in two. I never seen people so happy in my life in Victory Lane as they were. And L.G. DeWitt was so happy it's way beyond his wildest imagination to win the Daytona 500. I didn't want to go to teardown. So finally they paged me and I went. But, you know, checked the bore and stroke and it was okay. But it was a miracle it was okay because I didn't figured it would be. But anyway, that was one of the races I never believed we'd have won. 79, that's when Buddy Baker come to drive the car for Ranier, Harry Ranier. At the end of 79, there was only 3 of us in the shop. We had a machinist and a parts washer, basically. A part guy helped me with the engines. Anyway, and I built the engine 3 or 4 times before I finally got it where I looked for it. And I'm thinking, you know, we're getting ready for Daytona, and everybody takes the best piece they have to Daytona. You know, everybody wants to win the Daytona 500 because that's the Cadillac of all of them. You know, Harry Ranier had put me in charge of everything. So I had that race car, a full-bodied race car ready to go. We had done run it in 79. So I took it to this guy I knew and pulled strings down the side of it, you know, told him exactly what I wanted, showed it to him. I'd go back and he still couldn't get it right. And then I told him that long template that goes over the race car, it had to fit like a glove. And finally he did get it before I liked it. And when we showed up at Daytona in 1980 with Baker, the car was fast. Matter of fact, on Saturday afternoon, some of the people was complaining about the car. It was coming up on them so fast they couldn't see it coming because it was the gray top and black bottom. They call it the Gray Ghost. We painted the bottom of it on the air dam orange day glow, so they could see it coming. And then in the Sunday morning of the 500, Dick Beatty paged me to the office. I said, what on earth? Because Bill Francis done tell me I was stinking up the show. So I went to the office, he run the people I was in there and said, sit down over there, I want to talk to you. He said, let me tell you something, ain't nobody here wants to run against that car today. I said, Dick, there's nothing wrong with the car. He said, yeah, we've had the template on it, we've looked at it, we can't find anything wrong with it. He said, I'd like people to go through inspection where you can just see how legal it is. And I'm thinking, I don't want them to do that. See, you know, that would give it away, one of the things that I had.
What was that?
That was when I had, you know, the air going in, you know, you let the front end down and you hurt the cowl pressure.
How did you measure that back then? Like, when did cowl pressure going into the engine become something that was on your...
Well, it was something you knew, just, you know, it was just something you had a feel for, you know, to do things, you know. You can hold your hand out of wind and going 55 mile an hour, hold it like that, and it won't bend it back and forth. But if you bend it like that, it won't tear it off. So there's a lot of things you can think about, just like I was telling about the Gatorade, things like that. But I knew that when you got a net like this, and then if you do it that way, it's going to reduce the pressure in the cowl. It's just common sense to think about it, you know. The more you stand up, the more pressure is going to be right here at the bottom of this cowl. So anyway, but the car was good, you know. We ended up during the race, you know, Buddy run most of the laps, you know, up front, and then when it was over, he won it. And come down there at the end, the last pit stop, I remember Bobby Allison drafted off of us in Bud Moore's Ford. So I told Buddy, I said, we need 1 can of gas. So to make it to the end, we had to get it all in the car because it took about 6 to 7 seconds to dump a full can of gas. So I wanted him to sit there that long, and Buck Brigance was the gas man. He hooked up as soon as, actually before Buddy stopped, and I reached in and grabbed him by his uniform that hopefully I could hold him because I knew he had no patience. And I was counting back, and I got to 4, and I could hear the engine rev up, and he's going to leave. And he did, but Buck stayed with it enough to get the gas in the vehicle. We ended up winning the race that day. I remember coming in the victory lane, and one of the guys there said, well, you guys just set a record, 188 plus miles an hour, the fastest anybody's ever been. And till this day, it's still a record stands.
Did you ever do any testing to see if the increased cowl pressure would offset the drag it created by the straight up?
Well, if you set the car like you want it, you know, you want to pull the whole car, you want the whole car down, you know, you don't just want the hood down.
Oh, so you're keeping the same angle between the windshield and the hood.
Yeah, you want to, you know, keep that down. But then, you know, whenever, I'd love to put that car in a wind tunnel. To this day, I always wondered what it would have done in a wind tunnel. You know, after that, we got to going into wind tunnels. But at that time, we hadn't been able to get these cars, or at least we didn't, in the wind tunnel.
You just answered a question I wanted to ask you, because when you were telling me that stuff on the phone, I thought, were they doing wind tunnel testing back then, or did he just know this stuff?
No, it is something we just worked and trial and error, and, you know, a lot of things. We tested at Daytona and Talladega quite a bit, you know, and everybody had ideas, and, you know, you'd listen to them. Some things are good and some things wasn't flip. But it was an interesting time to make cars go fast back then because, you know, the engines hadn't been restricted at that time. I remember when we went to Daytona with Bobby Allison, we had a Nosemobile. They just downsized the cars. We'd been running Nosemobiles, the Gray Ghost and all that. So we went down there with that Oldsmobile, and I'll never forget, Bobby was coming around warming the car up just on a slow lap. And I told Harry Ranier, the owner, I said, that car will never get the speed. He said, well, it ain't going fast enough. I said, no, he won't either. Listen to it, it's like a flag flapping in the wind. It's beating itself against itself. And it was, and it didn't run. And that's when we come up with that Pontiac LeMans, and we went, I had a guy to go out there and to NASCAR and get what's legal for the next year. So he come back and there was a Pontiac LeMans, a Pontiac Grand Prix. I said, what the heck is a LeMans? So we go to the dealership, they don't have one, but they have one that's on a picture of it. Showed it to him. Dang, it's a fastback. Wow, that's it. So I called the shop and told them to get the parts and pieces to build one. We didn't have no template, nothing to go by. So we built that thing, went through Talladega. Whenever we showed up at Daytona, Bill France came to me and he said, "How'd you come up with this?" And I said, "Well, it's in the rule book. Here's a legal cars." He looked at it, and Bill Gasaway, when it okayed it, staying there beside him. I mean, he jumped all over him before he could catch himself. So he said, "Whatever, don't you have something else you could bring?" I said, "No, that's all I got." They didn't find a car in Georgia, in Florida. They found one in Georgia, so they had to bring a car down there and make templates off of it. We sat there. We didn't get on the racetrack till right before time to garage closed the day before qualifying, and we did get a couple of laps. That's it. And then the next day we go out there and sit on the pole, and that really ticked them off. But anyway.
So they had to go make a template to check your car because they weren't even ready to. They had to go find one and make the template. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they brought the car down there and took them a day or two to make templates for it. We just sat there. We couldn't do nothing. That was one day that still haunts me. We led the race and then run out the gas at the last pit stop. Coming into pits, we run her out.
Did they let you
Still make me sick.
Did they let you keep using that car after that race?
Oh yeah, but then they started taking the spoiler off of it, and we just had to quit running it.
Huh.
You know, they have a way of stopping you.
Do you recall the phone call to Mark Martin, and was it 1981 or something? Whenever he told the story where you called him and asked him to drive the 28 car, and he said no. Do you remember that?
You know what's funny about they inducted him in the Southern Motorsports Hall of Fame. It's been a few years back. And I was in the audience, and they'd already inducted me in. And anyway, as soon as it's over and they gave me his reward and all, and he comes straight off that stage to me and he said, "The biggest mistake I ever made in my life was didn't drive your race car." So, well, you had the opportunity. But he says, "I was afraid you wouldn't let me do the chassis." I said, "Let me tell you something, how it's been. If you'd have come in there, that would have been your deal. I took care of the engine. You take care of the car." He said, "No, don't tell me that." He said, "You really made me sick now. If I could have worked on had an input on that race car, I'd want the input definitely." You know, he was a heck of a race car driver, and short track especially.
Yeah.
You know, he was a talented young man. But he told me that in front of a whole bunch of people too. He said, "That's the biggest mistake I ever made, not drive your race car."
What was that conversation like with Ranier at the table? Because drivers that young weren't normal yet, where you thought, "Hey, let's call this 21-year-old Mark Martin kid to drive this car."
He just left it up to me. I don't remember ever even talking to him about it, to be honest with you, Harry Ranier.
Where did you first hear Mark or think that he would be a good guy to do that?
Well, I'd seen what he was doing. I'd seen, you know, his stats, and he was young, and you know, what he had, I could see what he had, you know, and he was taking and being able to win with it. It amazed me. So I figured, well, he would be a big plus if we could get him, but I called him and he turned me down. But there's a whole bunch of them come begging to drive that race car, and no, heck no.
What happened with Benny Parsons after that?
Then in '82, Talladega, at that time, no one had broke 200 mile an hour qualifying legally. You know, with that day when we qualified with Benny, we went over 200. We was on the car to run over 200 mile an hour that day. So some of the guys come to me wanting some passes for their wives, so I had to go outside to the offices to get the passes, and I won't go in there, and I mean, they're jumping up, hollering, so the phones ain't quit ringing. 200 mile an hour was a magic number. So anyway, but we didn't win the race. We should have, but we lost the race. And then the next year, then it was with Cale in '83, Cale Yarborough, and what a driver he was. I knew him since the Holman Moody days, but never worked with him. And I'd been with Buddy and all these drivers, Allison, you name them, and always the second or third lap, you knew exactly what you had. But in the wind tunnel, we'd been to the wind tunnel with the car, and the wind tunnel was really good. The numbers we found out on the wind tunnel.
Which wind tunnel was that back
then? In
Detroit. Detroit?
Yeah. Ford was down in Marietta, Georgia. We went with Ford to do the wind tunnel.
When did you start using wind tunnels?
That was about the first time No, it was before that. Anyway, we had done it with the Pontiacs in '82. Anyway, the numbers are good, and they asked me how much horsepower I had, and I told them, I said, that car running 203 miles an hour. I think, dang, okay. But, you know, I wasn't already done it at Talladega. I wanted to be the first to do it at Daytona.
How much power did it have?
I couldn't give you a number now to save my life. But anyway, we get to Daytona, and 45 flat, 200 miles an hour, and Cale's out there running 45-7 this day. And I think, what is wrong with this race car? Because, you know, Buddy or Bobby or any of them guys in it, second or third lap, you knew exactly what you had. But he was out there sandbagging. I didn't know, I wasn't used to somebody doing that to me. And I said, you know, what's wrong with the car? I mean, this is on Saturday afternoon before qualifying on Sunday morning, or Sunday. He said, let me tell you something. I've never been in nothing this fast. He said, this ain't got enough horsepower in it. When I'm going down the back stretch, it hits them little ripples and it spins the tires. And he said, when I go into turn 3, it's like you hold a needle and try to, you know, not try to thread it. But he said, don't you touch the car. There ain't nothing wrong with the car. Okay. But he had never took it to speed, you know, to know what it would do. But in the spoiler, it was a notchback Chevrolet, and it had lift. You know, we found that out in the wind tunnel. I mean, you could look at the car and tell it'd do that at speed. I put the spoiler down at 20 degrees, and he bent it some more when we got out there on getting ready to qualify. You know, back then you could take the spoiler off and throw it away, and it might as well. Wouldn't do that much good. But anyway, the first lap was 44.70 something. The guy gave me a tape on it, and I lost it. But it was well over 200 miles an hour. And then going down the backstretch, they was jumping up and down, so you think that's something. He's on a clip now at 203. But then he went into turn 3 and the thing decided to be an airplane that flew. Dick Beatty picked me up on pit road. We went up to where the car was at. It was back on its wheels. And the guy that was standing there with it said, Cale jumped out and just wanted to know if he broke 200 miles an hour. I went in the infield care center where they had him, and he was in there. They had to top his uniform down, checking him over, and he said, he looked at me and he said, well, you're doing everything right but one thing. I said, what was that? You didn't put the controls in so I could fly it. He was a comic, but you know, then, you know, the car was tore up. As soon as I come back in the garage area, Bill France Jr. come to me and he said, well, if you'll fix that race car, you've already got the record now for over 200 miles an hour. Then you can work on it 24 hours a day up until the qualifying races on Thursday, and you have to start that and run 2 or 3 laps. You can come back in and continue working on it. And I said, okay. But anyway, the guys come to me, some of them worked for MC Anderson, and Cale wanted me to hire them, and they said, oh, we ain't working on that race car. Leonard Wood come to me, and he said, what else? He said, you've been on the pole 4 years in a row, different drivers and different cars, and you're not going to fix that race car? I mean, you've already got the record. I mean, he was beside himself that I wasn't going to fix that race car. But the funny thing about it, Junior Johnson went by it, and one of his friends told me this, what he said about it. He said, anything go that fast ought to turn over. But anyway, we brought the show car back down and fixed it, and Cale ended up winning the race with it. That was 83, and then 84, we went back to the Chevrolet. But the next thing about it, you know, if we'd have been on the pole at 203 miles an hour, the pole car ended up only 198 miles an hour. We'd have been on the pole with 5 miles an hour.
Where did the backup car come from? Because
From the shop.
Popular lore is that, I don't know where the story came from, that you went over to a Hardees near Daytona.
Yeah, they've told that about the Hardees story.
Yeah, we gotta set the record straight.
Yeah, Hardees was a sponsor, and we had something over at the Hardees store, I think. So I don't remember who started that, but anyway.
So the car you used was came from the shop.
Yeah.
It was a prepared race car.
Yeah, my son, and one of the guys that worked for us, Roger Legion, he had an old dirt car he run on Saturday night. And they put the car on that and brought it down the road. And they took it back that way, and nobody believed that was a real race car. It wasn't the Daytona 500. I know. It was always a lot of different things, a lot of different times. But then we went back the next year in 84 and won the Daytona 500. We won it both years.
Were the engines that you would build for Daytona and Talladega different than the engines that you would build for other tracks because they were none of them were restricted?
Yeah, you know,
different?
whenever I worked with Fred Lorenzen, he'd always tell me where he wanted his engine to run at. And, you know, I learned so much from working with him back in the 60s, early 60s, whenever I was on his pit crew. And then I'd be at the racetrack with him. And then I'd build his engines, and he'd tell me what he's looking for, and I would dial it into whatever he wanted. And most of the time he'd say, I want to, from the start, you know, from getting in the corner to the start-finish line, and not after that. But you're talking about changing things around. One of the best things I ever done was with Buddy Baker. You know, he could not finesse a race car. He, you know, he was either on the gas or off the gas, and he wasn't a left foot braker, he was a right foot braker. So a lot of them ride the brake with their left foot. So he takes care of the brakes, and we're going to Martinsville. And I'm thinking, God, Buddy Baker at Martinsville, and I know what Harry Hyde said about him, you know. And I said, you know, it's not a racetrack for him. And I said, Richard Petty wins everything at Martinsville. When he flat puts that thing in the corner, he's on the gas off of it. I will build an engine where when he flat footed, it won't have no power. But when he gets started down the straightaway, then it's going to kick in. So I built that engine. It was, you just swore we was going to Daytona, Talladega with it, because I rolled it out there, the boys put it in the car, and they said, we ain't going to Daytona, and they just put it in the car and hush. So they put it in the car. And that day, whenever he led over half of the races, Richard Petty running second to him, and won the Martinsville race, which is unheard of. And I remember all the crew chiefs and people coming on me and said, how on earth did you get him to do that? But it was an amazing win for him to win that day.
So you kind of built the engines tailored to what the driver liked, like how the power band was.
Oh, yeah.
All that stuff.
Yeah, you always listen to him, what they're looking for and what they like. And, you know, always try to, you know, satisfy, because if you don't do what the driver wants, you're in trouble. That's the first thing you learn is you try to do what they want you to do, because they're going to give it 100% to prove they're right. And if you have to do it your way, then they ain't going to prove you to be right. You know, they're just normal individuals. You just got to think what they're thinking.
That makes sense. So a lot of these, when you were a crew chief, a lot of these stories are about the engine or the air. Did you put any emphasis or study on like the chassis stuff, or did that not interest you as much as engines?
No, I'd always, you know, line up the cars and, you know, set them up, you know. I remember one time we was at Michigan with Cale Yarborough. I don't remember what year it was, but we won 4 races in a row up there with Cale. Well, back to the shop, this engineer from Ford Motor Company, we had him to help us. So he come in the engine shop where I built engines. He said, let me set the car up. I said, okay, you know, that'll be good. I won't have to do it. But he sets it up, we'll go up there, and I didn't pay much attention to what he'd done to it, you know. He come down to Bobby Allison's fastest car by far, and he's coming up behind Cale to lap him, and he threw a caution. And that's the worst thing Cale ever said to me. He said, damn it, Waddell, fix this thing. And Harry Ranier, the owner, he got a hold of me, and he said, Waddell, fix that race car. Okay. So I put some changes on it. It was on 3 wheels, and got that bideck, put a full rubber in the right front, and went back out there, and we're at the back of the pack, because we worked on it in the pits, and we had a slow pit stop, so we're in the back. And Cale works his way to the front, and I'm thinking, well, we still can't win this race, because Bobby's he's going to out fuel mileage, because he always gets better fuel mileage than we do. It come down about 20 to go, and then a caution come out again. And then I worked on it a little bit more. We're at the back again, and Cale went by him and ended up winning that race that day. But I remember that was something. You know, that it was. If it hadn't been for him hollering at me, I don't know what we'd have done. Probably just lost the race. But it was all them drivers is different. You know, it was an honor to work with so many of them good drivers. You know, to get with a good driver, that makes your day.
What was the story about whenever Ranier switched to Ford and you had to use the Ford engines? How did that go?
Yeah, they made engineers out of it. They having some winds or block. And we go to Talladega and test. We only run a couple laps at a time. So anyway, we go on down to Daytona, and people from Talladega told them at Daytona we'd run a lot faster than what we actually did. We get down there, and in the 20 lapper, you know, the qualifying race, you know, Cale was leading it, and in 2 or 3 laps, he said, temperature's going up on this thing, and it's not slowing down. I said, well, Pitt. So we went in the garage, took the heads off of it, and I could see then where the water was trying to go through, but there wasn't no hole there, you know, in the gasket. So this engineer was there, and I called him about it. He said, ain't nothing wrong with that thing, it'll flow water. I grabbed him and threw him out the side of the trailer. I said, Dad, you know, I was figuring he could call Ford Motor Company and they could tell me what to do to it, instead of me having to figure it out. So anyway, I went ahead and drilled holes in the block, drilled holes in the head, had to have the water outlets made different. I got that fixed, and the oil pump, the distributor was pumping oil up inside it. Had to get that fixed. And then we run the 125, and then we start the 500, we're leading it, and the thing dropped the valve. So I knocked us out of the 500. But anyway, but after the qualifying race, I took the head apart again and took the engine apart and made a couple more changes on the head gasket. And I remember Jerry Rosenquist with Fail Pro Gasket, he come to me and said, can I have that head gasket? And he said, I'll be by your shop Monday morning and get it. I said, okay, you have it. So I gave it to him. He told me about 5, 6 years after that, he said, you know that head gasket you made? It's still the same head gasket today.
I want to ask Seth, there's probably one of those in here. I'd like to see where that,
I bet they're over here.
where that hole is. Oh, hiding in plain sight, you found one.
Yeah.
Yep, 302. All right, now we're going to find out where the Waddell hole is.
You know, to this day, I couldn't tell you exactly where. What I'd done was, you know, they would, places, you know, they'd put pressure on it where the holes needed to be.
I found a picture of some new old stock head gaskets from like 1969 or something for a small block Ford, and you can see that it does have a lot less holes in it than the one Waddell is holding right now. I would imagine those are the holes he's talking about, but I'm not really sure. This is kind of the best example I get. You can tell with the little holes that are not present on this one next to the head bolt holes.
And then I cut them out, and I wish I had the one that made it off of, but it was, yeah, and this is a Fail Pro gasket right here. They were good people to work with, very good.
So you said you worked on the GT40 tests at Daytona?
Yeah, well, I worked on when they raced them down there. You know, I was on Mario's car. I was the front tire changer, brakes and rotors, and we had to do during the race.
You had to change the brakes during the race?
Oh yeah, change the pads every 4 miles, and then 4 hours, and then halfway through the race, we changed the way we had it figured out. Change the rotors and the pads. It wasn't bad. You had to have asbestos gloves on.
You read my mind. I was going to ask you what you had to grab those with, because I got to be
Oh
hot.
yeah. You didn't want to do that.
Did you ever drive one of these things?
I'd love to. I'll never forget when the first one they brought to Daytona, and John Holman took me out there to it when we was going to take it apart. And that was the coolest looking race car, or car period, I'd ever seen in my life.
What did you think about 180 degree headers?
I've done a lot of work with headers, but 180s I didn't find that to work that good. The pipes coming underneath the oil pan, that was to heat the oil up, you know.
That makes sense.
I stayed away from them. I mean, they could, you know, Junior Johnson, you're right, he run them there at one time. He'd run them long ago. He found out that wasn't the way to go. I'd put them on the dyno, and it had a crazy sound to it.
Sounds good.
That's just right. That's enough. Was you there that time that Moody decided he'd take one around the buildings, the old shop?
No.
And he missed the corner. Your dad was about to kill him. Tore up that car.
Missed the corner.
He missed the corner. Do you remember Arthur B. Hyde?
Yes.
Whatever happened to him? Of course, I know he's deceased by now, but
Yes, but do you know who he was?
he's the dangest fabricator I ever seen. That's what he was.
But the funny thing was, this was an English gentleman that came over from England on a freighter with no money and ended up working at Holman Moody and was a very talented English fabricator. But he kept telling me about his racing career. And it turned out that he was a British gentleman of great wealth and was married to a wonderful woman apparently, and he raced cars in the 30s all over Europe. He drove the cars and owned them and won races and was very good, and his wife somehow caught something or got a disease and died suddenly, and he just went off the deep end and lost all his money, lost everything. And when he came to work at Holman Moody, he was unemployed and broke and just stopped by looking for a job.
I know he could take a piece of metal and somehow he'd flap something against it and he could deform that thing to, it's the most amazing thing I ever seen.
Yeah.
What was your header preference? Did you do equal length headers or?
I had different people come and make headers for us. I didn't get into that, let them do it. And we had one guy, I remember whenever Cale was driving a car, I remember we had the regular headers on it to start with and then put them on there. The guy made for me, made them into shop, and he picked up a race car. I know one thing, everybody's looking at their watches when there's time in the car and said, oh, what did they do?
Just from changing the headers.
Yeah, it was the headers.
Did he ever tell you what he did? Like what was different about him?
Well, you know, you can look at him and tell, you know, he got them pretty much equal length. You know, they'd worked on that. And then where the four go into one, I forget what you call it, that merge. Anyway, there's a lot to be gained in headers and tailpipes.
That's the part I think is really interesting because it's like, I think it's kind of like overlooked by, I don't know.
Well, you know, you can't overlook any of it, really. Anything that's part of it, I always looked at some way can be improved. What are you looking at so hard?
Some of the welds on the headers.
The weld inspector.
Normally girls don't get in that enthused about these things.
No, that's cool. I like this stuff. I want my Mustang to sound like one of these.
Do what now?
I want my Mustang to sound like one of these.
Oh, you got a Mustang?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
67 Mustang.
I always loved Fords. I guess I worked with Holman Moody for all them years and all the engineers. And we learned so much from working with them guys. They were smart people.
Were they more fun to work with than GM?
Yeah, I never learned anything. I'll never forget being in the wind tunnel at GM. This guy that was with me, he said, you know what you're doing? You're educating them about this race car, about aerodynamics. Yeah, that's what he said. You're crazy, so don't quit telling them things. And I never learned anything from Chevrolet, nothing.
Really?
I can remember Ford I did. You know, the Ford people, before they pulled out of racing in '69, first of '69, whenever they grounded it all up. We was at Daytona, and I remember the guy that was going to home, back up here at the shop, Holman Moody in town, said, I've got to go ground the Air Force because we have just pulled out of racing. And we can't even mention racing. They had a big budget for it, but the stockholders is when it come down on them and stopped it.
Did you ever talk to Etzel Ford when you would go to Ford and you guys would share information and stuff? Was he involved?
No, I never. I mean, his engineers is up there, and they were some great engineers. You know, they're all passed on now, but I remember, you know, going up there and working with them in different projects, you know, but I remember going in there and meeting the head man at Ford. I never, you know, when we switched in '85, when we switched to Ford, and they wanted us to come up there, Cale and I, so we flew up there, and then they took us to this big office, big room with his office and everything. But it was one of the Ford people, I'm assuming. I don't remember much about it because he didn't have much time for us.
Yeah, I don't know who would have been the head guy back then. Like in the '60s, it was Henry Ford II, and then through the 80s, I really am not sure.
You know, Edsel, the grandson,
Yeah.
he'll come to me still to this day and say, let's talk. And he wants me to talk about Holman Moody days.
He just wants to learn about it?
Yeah, and you know, the funny thing about it, and he was asking me that when we had the Hall of Fame deal, he's on that board with us. And he said, you know, he said, the unions built the engines at Holman Moody for these Mark IIIs and 4s and the cars. I said, no, we didn't do either. I said, you said, you're kidding. I said, no, I was right there in the middle of it. We didn't build one of these. No. There was a place in Detroit, I'm thinking, that built the engines, and the cars were built overseas. Seemed like in England, someplace.
Like tenant panels or something, I think he said.
You know, they built these things, and then and I did know the name of that lead, probably remember it, that built the engines. That 67, I think, was the year we had the trouble with these things, was breaking the inputs out of the transmissions. The heat treat didn't get the heat treat done correctly. That's what they found out later and told me.
Did you ever change a transaxle at the track, like in the pits or anything? It never broke during a race?
Well, we had one transmission left at Daytona whenever a couple of them was falling out, and they wanted to save it for Dan Gurney. So, Gurney and AJ.
Have you seen the old dyno control board they have over there? He kept one of the dyno operator things. I don't even know what the right word for that is.
I'll tell you one thing, the dangest thing I ever seen, you talking about a dyno. This old boy built one of them drag engines out of aluminum blocks and aluminum rods and everything for drag racing. Had 2 4 barrels on it, 4500 series carburetors too. So I told him, I said, you better make sure it had a magneto, so the only way you kill that is ground it. So he didn't have it hooked up, and he fired that thing up and it took off, and he didn't have them carburetors set right. And anyway, before he went out there first and turned all the switches off, then he went out and took a speed handle and beat on the distributor, tried to beat the distributor to stop, and finally it blew to all pieces. I mean, parts was flying everywhere, and oil and aluminum rods and everything. I mean, it junked that. I've seen 2 or 3 of them messed up like that. It was stupid what he done.
Is this the same kind of control panel that you would have been using back then?
They've added and taken away from it. It's not the same. Close to it, I guess.
For someone who wasn't alive in that time, for any of the times, like for example, I was born in '98. For someone who wasn't around for like the height of NASCAR being awesome and everybody being so successful and legends like you guys and what you guys were doing, what do we need to know? Like, all we can find is what's on the internet, or pick up a book and find stuff, but not all those stories are out there.
For me, those old people have already passed on, you know. That's just like when Fireball got in the Hall of Fame. I was the only one left. It was on his crew. Inducted him in, but you know, it's a lot of talented people back in the days, and, you know, and had nothing to work with to make these cars go fast. You know, but even back in the '60s, we just using street parts basically, trying to make them live. And you know, we was driving. I mean, when I first went to work for Holman Moody in '63, we was blowing up engines, dropping valves, and having all kind of trouble with them, breaking rail springs. I remember in '65 we built 500 and some engines. They wasn't before us in that engine room. How on earth did we do that? 500 and some engines.
Yeah.
But normal day was 8 in the morning, 10 at night. There's a lot of those nights I wanted to quit. Some of them did. Some of them quit. I can't take this. It was hard. $1.50 an hour. Your dad ought to kick his butt. Pay me work like that.
And the only comparison I can have is it was costing Ford Motor Company $1 million a month to keep Holman and Moody going with that many people. And I'm told that that Hendrick Motorsports, with the same number of people, back before they got the new generation cars, it was costing them $1 million every business day to cover the cost of running the race teams and doing it. The difference was when we had sponsors like Young Ford, that meant Young Ford loaned us a truck for a year. We'd have a free pickup truck to use for a year. There was no money involved. And so when you win a race at Talladega or win a race at Darlington, you were winning, back in the 60s, you were winning $3,000 to $5,000. You weren't winning $2.5 million to run. And so I think the dollars came in, and a lot of the guys that were racing just because, by God, I want to win. It didn't matter whether I got paid or not. Those guys got set to the wayside or aged out, and you end up with a group of people that are there because of the amount of money they could put in their hip pocket, and they're not going to risk everything just for money, but that's all they were racing for was money.
Yeah, well, there at one time the money people come in the racing. I remember Hal Needham come to me. We was at Richmond. We was downtown at the restaurant, and he was in there, and he walked over to me and laid me a check down there, and he said, "You fill it out." I said, "You take it." Yeah, well, I didn't want to work with people like that. Yeah. And then I was in Riverside, and I think God, he and Junior hooked up. The Junior Johnson was together there. He was from California. What was his name?
Hodgson.
Huh?
Warner Hodgson.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah, thank you. Anyway, he come in the garage area. He was able to get his car in the garage area, and then it was a Ferrari, one of them high dollar pieces. He gets out of that thing, and I walked by, and I said, "Man, I like your car." He said, "You come to work for me, it's yours." No.
And Junior smoked off a lot of those people. A lot of Junior's money came from selling those people part of his business, and first time they missed a payment, he had repossessed their part of the business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember Junior, he tried to get me to come to Wilkesboro and work. No. And then he wanted me to build engines for him and Herb, when Herb went up there. And I told him, I said, "I'm building for Lorenz, and I can't build for you and them both."
Herb Nab, that was a character.
Oh, gosh.
He couldn't read or write, and his way of measuring something was to take a monkey wrench and put it on and just see how big it was, and then go take the monkey wrench around and try and match stuff up, because he couldn't read a scale. He couldn't read a caliper. But he was a famous race car mechanic.
He was hard to work around.
Yeah, if you liked your tools, because he was bad about.
He is a brutal person. Worked around him 2 different times.
Mm-hmm.
And he was, when I went building engines for Lorenzen and Jackman, he was the crew chief, and he was the front tire changer, and that's when we had to start lug nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew good and well, if I didn't get my lug nuts started, he'll run that air wrench over my hand. And I knew he would. He wouldn't hesitate. That's just the kind of person he was.
Yeah.
He's the only person I ever met in my life from Idaho. He was from Idaho. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from Idaho.
That's a valid point. I don't know if I've ever met anybody from Idaho. What made you want to write that book?
Well, that was a mistake.
How so?
No, there's Benny Parsons, Steve Smith, and he was doing it on driving, and they come to me and said, "Why don't we do it on engines?" Okay. So now, if you'll do it, I'll give you $1 a copy. All right. So we done it, and they come to me, said, "Who you get endorse it?" Well, I called AJ Foyt will endorse it for us. So I called AJ and said, "Yeah, send me a couple of copies." I said, "Okay." So he endorsed the book and sent him copies. 2 or 3 days later, he called me and he said, "Waddell, I ain't believing what you've done. You just opened up to the world what you know about engine." Mm-hmm. And you know that book's still good today.
Wow.
If I put it on now, it's on the internet. It's like $50-some,
Yeah.
for that book if you find one.
People still reference it.
And I mean, it's still good today, though. It's still basics. There it is.
You still getting $1 a copy?
No, That's the reason I stopped, because I had signed more than I got paid for. I said, "You lying son of a gun." So I made him stop it. Ain't no telling how many copies have been sold by now. I remember there was a friend of Smokey Units come to me years ago and said Smokey had got puzzled on something or other and couldn't figure it out. And he said, "Well, I'll go get that book Waddell wrote and see what he says." Smokey, what a character that was.
Was there anything you put in that book that years later you look back at that and you're like, dang, I figured out a way better way to do this? Or
No, is the basics is there. And people still buy that and build engines by it.
Today, I've gotten 2 emails from people that want to do tribute cars for the Pearson or Fred Lorenzo car, and where do I get wheels? Where do I get engine parts?
You can't get those wheels no more.
At any price, you just can't find them. And I'm telling people to just go burn a few $100 bills in your backyard and get over it. Because you can't make.
Well, people don't realize that Holman Moody made all the wheels for NASCAR back in the days. When I was there, they was making them all. I remember Lloyd, I forget his last name, Baxter or something, Lloyd, yeah.
Lloyd.
He was the one who was building all those wheels.
Yeah,
Welding them all up.
yeah.
And that was for everybody in NASCAR.
For years, the NASCAR rule book had Holman and Moody's drawings of the chassis and the roll cage and the suspension, and that was in the NASCAR rule book what you had to race with. If you want to race in NASCAR, this is what you have to build. And it was all
sounds
Holman
familiar,
and
doesn't it?
Stuff, yeah.
Kind of sounds like right now. People don't remember that there was a time where it kind of worked that way back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, but the difference was we made the stuff affordable. 45 bucks a wheel, and all of like the front spindles, all the front suspension was based on a 1953 Lincoln.
Waddell definitely fits into that category of last of his generation. Like, I think he said he's the last crew member still living from Fireball Roberts' team. That's just crazy. I think at some point in my lifetime, there will be a time where nobody who ever worked at Holman Moody will be alive anymore. And I'll be sitting there thinking, dang, I got to spend some time with these dudes, got to talk to them, got to learn from them. And other people our age won't be able to say that because they were all doing dumb stuff when they were in their late 20s. And nope, not us. We're walking around with a camera making sure we get all this stuff documented so we can live forever, so it doesn't go away. And if you support that, make sure you're subscribed. Hit the thumbs up on this video. Leave a comment with what you thought was interesting. We answer almost all the comments, especially if they're in the first few days of the video being live. And you can check out StaplestonAutoworks.com to find the new shirts and hats we got up there. These hats, I got to put them on the website. They'll be up there by the time this video gets posted, though. And the shirts, I'm wearing a First Form shirt. Bad advertisement for ourselves and our own shirts, but we like to wear stuff from companies that support us, too. You can also become a channel member if you'd like to. For like $5 a month, you can access other like live stream recordings, and you get a cool badge next to your name when you comment on stuff, and it does help the overall picture. You'd be surprised there is strength in numbers. And this took a long time to edit this one. There's a lot of pictures. Normally I don't put pictures in through the entire thing like we did with this, but if that was important to you, if you noticed it, let me know. Give me feedback on how these videos are being produced so I can fine tune it to what you guys want to see. And I'd also like to know if you like the authentic openings where we kind of turn the camera on without, going right into the story. So we're kind of, we do that so it's more like it feels like you're there with us. If that's something you like, let me know so we can keep doing it. If you don't like it, let me know so we don't do it anymore. So thank you, and we will see you in the next video, which will probably be Harry Gant's scrapbook stories. So when we did that one video with Harry Gant, we filmed for a lot more worth of footage than just that one video, so there'll be another one. If you haven't seen that yet, go watch it.